All right, everybody. Well, welcome. Let us get started. My name is Anthony Woolen. I'm the owner and broker of The Collective, and we are here again giving another home buyer seminar. We do these every few months because it's such an important opportunity for you to learn how to get into the home buying process. There's not a lot of education out there, and we really want to make sure that you see us as a resource of teaching you how step by step to go through that process, because it can seem overwhelming. You know, most people think you need 20% down to purchase a home, and we'll be explaining that that's just not true. We're going to have a lot of different stories to tell. We have an amazing lender here today. We'll have to hear some stories from some agents. And most importantly, if you have any questions, you'll be able to ask us as well. So we're going to start with talking about renting versus owning. Then we'll get into some questions with Natalie, who's an amazing lender. And she's going to share with us on credit requirements and how to improve your credit and what down payment options are available. And then we'll go into what it actually looks like to purchase a home. What does escrow look like? How do we find homes? What does the negotiation process look like? What does it cost for closing costs? And so on. So we'll walk you through the whole process step by step. And our goal today is to hopefully get you to the point where you understand how important it is in order to build wealth long term to become a homeowner. The number one way to build wealth in our country is through home ownership. And we'll be proving that to you today. After the seminar, the next step would be to speak with a lender and get pre-qualified yourself to let them know your situation, what you're making, what your income is, what your debts are, what your credit is, and they'll help you get pre-approved and figure out what price range is the right price range for you to look at. Luckily, we're in LA County, and we have so many different opportunities in areas and neighborhoods of all kinds of different price ranges that you're going to be able to find something that will work for you. So why don't we get started with one of our agents, Tim? And you're a homeowner, you're a realtor, and you're going to talk to us a little bit about your story, why homeownership is so important and how it's affected you. So let me add you on into our spotlight.
Oh, thanks, Anthony. I'm Tim Tobish. I am indeed an agent here at the Collective Realty in Los Angeles. And I am relatively new to the world of real estate agency. I've been licensed for about 3.5, 4 years now. And my journey into home ownership was pretty closely tied into my journey as doing this as a profession. So I'm sure that most of you out there are looking to buy your first property and probably a primary residence for yourself, which is a great way to start building a path to wealth in real estate. And you're probably renting right now. There are times when rental makes sense. You've just moved to a new place and you don't really know the area. You don't really know where your job is. You don't really want to commit to a place yet. Or you know that you've moved to LA for a year on a project. You're an actor, you're a writer, or for whatever reason you do internet marketing and then or whatever. It's a gig, so you don't necessarily want to commit to living in one place. You could also be the most important thing that happens, or the most likely that often happens for people, is you're in a place, you've been there a long time, there's a bit of inertia. And you live in an area that, let's say you've lived there for a long time and your rent is fairly low because you're in a rent control area, and you really can't afford to buy where you're living anymore. It's gotten out of your reach. So you stay. This was my story for a long time. I lived in Venice for 15 years, 5 blocks from the beach, a couple blocks from Rose's best walking area in Los Angeles. And I finally just realized I was throwing money away by not owning property. And it was great. And I just came a time where you have to make that decision that the short-term benefits, while great, aren't necessarily worth it. And the fourth reason to be renting is another good one, which I hope you're all doing, is you're getting ready to buy, and you might be saving money. You might be building your credit. You might be going to seminars like this one and finding out how to do it, and hopefully finding out that it's relatively easy. There's basically 5 reasons why owning is better compared to rent. Rent goes up. If you've lived in a place long enough, it might go up slowly because you're rent control. If it's not rent control, it can go up as much as the landlord wants when your lease ends. In any event, mortgage remains constant unless you make a decision to change it. If you're living in a place and you love it, but you don't like the floors, if you own it, you can put in new floors, or you can, change your landscaping, which you can certainly do in a rental, but would you really want to do that and put money in your landlord's pocket again? Because he gets the improvements when you leave and you just say bye-bye. And your house, your rules. When you pay rent, it's different than paying a mortgage. Rent is a pure expense. You're basically giving your landlord money to pay his mortgages and increase his wealth. And when you pay a mortgage yourself, you pay both principal and interest. Interest is tax deductible, which is nice because most new homeowners have a nice surprise at the end of the year because they've saved on their taxes. But every dollar you pay towards principal is like putting $1 in your pocket. That's how you build wealth. You have access to that money to make additional investments or put your kids through college, or maybe do some work on your house and increase its value even more. Very easy in many ways to do that, and our lenders can talk about that too, and things like HELOCs and refinancing. And finally, that equity in your primary home can be used to buy additional property. So while your property appreciates, you're also building equity. And so, for example, when I bought this house, it was not as much as it is now. And even though I've refied and put more money, taken money out of it, it's still $500,000 in equity that if I had stayed in Venice and rented, I wouldn't have. And I probably would be unable to afford to even rent in Venice the way prices have gone. So anyway, that's my story. And I hope I've helped convince you guys that it's really a good idea to get in on the game. And I'd like to turn you over to our lenders, to Natalie, and talk more about the process.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. I mean, we hear these stories over and over again where, at certain times in your life, we need money and we need to borrow money. And when you have a home, it's like an automatic savings account that starts being built and created over time, and equity can be used when you need it. I know with my family, back in the 90s, when times were a little tough for them, they were able to pull money out in order to survive and just to keep paying the bills and, keep a roof over our head and food on the table. And the home was something that really saved us. If we had been renting at that time, we would have had a whole nother story. So it really can be a lifesaver for so many things. So I'm going to turn it over to Austin now. Austin has been doing some amazing TikTok live videos and TikToks, and you're hearing a lot of questions and concerns for people who are wanting to buy, and a lot of it's focused around lending, right? So why don't we also bring on Natalie from Movement Mortgage, who's one of my favorite lenders in all of Los Angeles, so we can address some of these questions that you've been hearing. And if any of you are listening, feel free to raise your hand and we'll be able to ask questions directly or type them in the chat, and we'll make sure we address them to you as well. So Austin, take it over.
Hey guys, I want to thank you so much. All of you guys are here from my TikTok account, or you come from my lives. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you guys, and especially to the masses. You guys have been so kind and heartwarming, and if you guys showed up here to my seminar, that brings so much to my life, and it means a lot. So if you guys have any questions, I really want you to feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll look them over, and then we'll kind of squeeze them in along the way. I want to introduce you guys to Natalie. You guys know who she is. She's the lovely lady in the striped shirt, and she is my personal friend and lender, and I don't send any of my leads to anyone else, because I know that through her knowledge and experience and her personality traits that revolve around compassion and intuition, it truly is just like the ultra combination you want from someone handling your finances and lending you money for a mortgage. So we're here mainly to talk about strategizing and home buying and how you can take your first steps. But first, we need to understand what it takes to buy a house and what it takes to get approved. And one of those things is credit score. So Natalie, I wanted to ask you, how important is credit score? A lot of people that talk to me have a lot of student loans. As you know, I've sent them emails. How badly do student loans affect your credit?
So they don't affect your credit at all, actually. The only time that student loans affect your credit is when you are delinquent on them, of course, because anytime you're delinquent on any money that you borrow and decide to not pay it, if you owe it, then you're going to be delinquent and it's going to affect your credit. But having student loans, if it's always in deferment, doesn't affect the credit at all. You don't have to pay monthly. It's just in deferment. It's not the best because you might know, but the student loans get bigger and bigger when it's in deferment. So you have to be careful of that a little. But unless you aren't paying, it doesn't affect your credit. As long as you're paying every month what you said you're going to pay or with the agreed upon amount, then it's all good. I have a client that has an 805 FICO and has like a $285,000 student loan.
Wow, that's huge.
When I first pulled her, when I first pulled her credit, I was like, I thought you said you didn't have a mortgage. I felt terrible. She's like, I don't have a mortgage. I was like, oh, sorry. Yeah. So they can be hefty.
It could happen. And one thing that I like to remind people all the time is just because you get told no once doesn't mean you can't go to another person. And someone like you, like I've had clients that have said, I've tried a million times, then I hand them over to you and you kind of just get the job done quick and easy. And then it makes me look so good, even though you did all the heavy lifting. So thank you for that.
Of course.
I see Andrew has a question about the what if my credit is good but my credit history isn't old enough?
That can sometimes be an issue because it does like to, you know, we say the more debt, the better. The longer that you've been able to prove that you can pay debt and pay it responsibly, the better. So just make sure if it's newer that you have 2 or 3 accounts. Don't have only one account. Try to get as many as you can because then it looks like you're more responsible the more you have to pay. Also, you can add some utilities on there. So you can add cell phone bills, gas bills, you know, internet bills, stuff like that can be added to the credit report by adding utilities on there. And that can help boost the score as well. So brand new credit doesn't have to be a terrible thing. You probably are not gonna see credit in the high 700s when it's new because it does need to be a little bit more established for that kind of score, but certainly good enough to get a loan.
That's good. Another thing that affects credit is credit cards. And a lot of people have so many credit cards, they don't have enough credit cards. If there was a perfect scenario regarding someone's credit, mainly through credit cards, what would it be? Like, would you have 3 credit cards opened? How much of that money would you use? Is there a cap on how much you're approved and what you use?
Very good question. So yes, normally we talk about credit limits to the third, basically. So you never want to go over that third amount. So if your credit limit is $3,000, try to stay under the 1,000 mark or under the 2,000 mark. Anything over the 2,000 mark is going to ding the credit a little bit more for sure. Over the 1,000 mark dings it a little bit, but if you can try to stay under that third amount of the limit, that's going to be best on your credit. As far as how many years they need to be open, I mean, I've got somebody who just opened credit less than a year ago, and she has 2 cards, and the score is 726. So she just paid it on time and never been late, and it's a great score.
It's a great thing to do.
So yeah. What is the score? Remind everyone, like, what's a great score? Like, if you're over a certain number, that's the best. And then what's second best?
Right. So anything over 740 is basically, on conventional loans, you can have a 742 FICO or an 800 FICO. You're going to get the same rate. Everything is the same, anything over 740. Then it gets dinged a little in between 720 and 740, but very small. But there is a small ding to the rate if your credit is in between the two. Under 720, it gets hit a little bit more. Under 700, even more. Under 680, even more. It goes by on the 20, and by each 20 lower, the rate gets hit a little bit more each time.
So what is the lowest like credit score that you've worked with to get a buyer into a home, maybe in the last year?
I'm working with someone right now who has 583 FICO.
583, okay.
583, and that's an FHA loan.
An FHA loan. Okay, so what's an FHA loan? We love FHA loans.
FHAs are amazing. It's kind of like a high risk loan. You're allowed to have low credit, zero money in the bank, very high debt ratios, which means the income to debt Basically, the income that you make, as opposed to the debt that you have, can be higher. So I can get you qualified for more. And they let you put as little as 3.5% down. FHA is great when it comes to a file that has some dinged credit or like trouble in the past and stuff. When we're going to 580 though, it's a specialty FHA loan. So you can do 580, it's 580 to 620. You can do it, but the file has to be cleaner. There has to be compensating factors. I can't take the ratio that high, you know, on an FHA at 580. So you have to just be very careful on that kind of file, but we can still do it.
Yeah, no, that's great to know, because we do get a lot of people who ask us about, you know, they said, hey, I have 620 credit score. Is it possible to buy right now? Well, the answer is yes. There's different programs. The costs are all different, but it's definitely something that we would say talk to Natalie about and see what the program looks like, what the payments look like, and how that works for you. But your credit score isn't necessarily going to be a factor that eliminates you from buying. There's still possibilities. So, you know, let's dive deeper into figuring that out. What else are you hearing, Austin? What are other questions that people are concerned about?
Well, a lot of people are wondering, because we have some people that are just getting out of college. They're pretty young, but they're not like old. Their credit history is very small. So a reoccurring question that I face is, how long does your credit history need to be? How many credit cards do you need to have, which we covered are 3, but how long does your credit history need to be? What needs to be on it? Are more ways of credit more impactful than others?
So again, there isn't an amount of time that it needs to be established. In fact, I have loan programs that you can have 0 FICO score. So no credit, no credit cards, nothing ever opened. And then we called it building credit. So we build your credit based on other accounts that you've had. So you would have to send me 12 months proof of paying your cell phone bill on time, your gas bill on time, your internet bill on time. We take 3 accounts. You need 12 months history of it, proof of you paying, and we call it building credit. We do assume your credit score is 620 when I price the rate. So the rate is hit, of course, when your FICO is at 0, but at least we can do it. And there are loan limits to that. You can't get a jumbo loan. You can't get an 822 loan. You have to stick to a certain point. But you can do 5% down and have 0 FICO score.
Evelyn Martinez had a question saying, is it true that if you don't use a credit card for a long period of time, it could go against your credit score? What would you say about that?
No, as long as it's open and in good standing. If they close it, it can affect your credit score. Anytime you have a closed credit card, it will affect your credit score. For whatever reason, the bureaus think that something went wrong and it affects the credit score, even though that's not true at all. It's a little ridiculous, but that's just like, it's an algorithm, guys, right? So it's all based on a computer pulling up a score that it thinks you should have, right? So when a card is closed, it reads that as like a risk thing. And it can hit the score, but only like 3 or 4 months. And then it'll go away.
Christy keeps commenting. She's saying, so basically you can poor rich and still buy a home. Well, it's a very optimistic comment. You can get certain terms based on your income, and then you can change it over time. Is that what it means to refinance? Can you talk about refinancing? Christy wants to know.
Yes. So you can purchase a home and then you'll have a certain program and terms to your rate and your mortgage. And then, yes, you can refinance later if your credit score goes up, rates are still low, refinance into the lower rate. We do this all the time with people who own companies who don't really report the income on their tax returns. So there are programs where we don't even need tax returns, maybe just a few bank statements. Now the rate is higher, of course, because imagine the level of risk that it is to not actually see somebody's tax return. But the rate is higher, and then you turn around a year or 2 later and you're actually filing tax returns that show more income on them. We can refinance you into the lower, more optimum rate.
Yeah, refinancing is really a gift to home ownership. You know, like Tim said earlier, when you own a home, you know, your mortgage is set, it's flat. When you rent, it goes up. Even if you're in rent control, it goes up. You don't have that stability. Now, when you own a home, it could go down. My mortgage, a lot of homeowners' mortgage over this last year actually went down substantially because rates happen to go down. So if you purchase a home and then 10 years later the rates are better, you can refinance and your mortgage payment might be even less. So it was a real blessing to be a homeowner over this last year, to be able to have a big savings in what I'm actually paying. I know Marshall is on here and you had a question. Do you want to go ahead and ask?
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, baby.
I did have a quick question. What if you have like a charge off on your credit? How long does that stay on, and how long does that affect your credit as well?
What kind of charge off? For a credit card or a car?
It was like a credit card charge off that I was never able to pay. Is that something that stays on for a very long time? Does it affect you for a very long time? How do those work? And is there a way to get rid of them besides paying them, or how does that work?
So if it's a collection, like if it gets turned into a collection, then that's normally a good thing, because you can ask for a deletion letter and get that collection removed completely as if it didn't exist. Now the card will still be shown on the credit report, and it'll show as late, that there were derogatories on it, right? That's where you can get into trouble. And those are harder to remove because it shows as late. And normally the company wants like pure proof that it wasn't your fault that they were late. Normally it just takes time. It doesn't just get removed and it won't just fall off. Actually, it stays on the credit. It just, after 7 years, it doesn't count against you at all. And then as time goes on, it stops counting as much against you. So when it's new, it obviously looks the most worst it's going to. It can be 100 to 150 points difference. And then as the months go on, as the years go on, it counts less towards the hit of your FICO score.
Now, if I were to open new accounts that are in good standing, does that offset the negative of the charge-off?
100%. The problem I have with most of my clients is they have a charge-off. They've had like a few bad, credit cards where, like, let's say in 2018, they had like a few bad months and all the credit cards have lates on them. The problem is they don't go out and establish new good credit. The moment you establish new good credit, it absolutely helps the credit score. So if you stick with only the cards that have derogatories on them, it takes such a much longer time to actually build that score back up. You get new credit cards, you open, you never pay late, you pay on time, you pay twice a month, I tell my clients to do sometimes, and kick that feedback into the system as good positive feedback, and it helps.
Yeah, Natalie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Andrew Garcia had a question. He was speaking earlier, nice guy. He had a question about his tax returns. I don't know where he went. I was wondering if you could specify that question because I didn't understand it myself in the chat. So Andrew, if you want to hop back on video and ask, that'd be great. But till then, some people are asking
how do you want to do it? Yeah, how do you want to do it, Anthony? Do you want to stick with credit right now, and then we'll move into income?
Let's move on to the next subject. But if there's any more specific questions, we could put them in, and we'll try to address them after if there's more time. But I also want to talk about, because also everybody, we have an amazing seminar we put on recently on just credit. So I posted in the chat our YouTube page at The Collective. You just search The Collective Realty on YouTube, and we did a full seminar on credit. That'll also be more education. That's really important, whether you're buying a house or a car or anything, to understand credit at a higher level. So check that out. And if there's any more specific questions, feel free to write them and we'll try to get there. But we need to move on to a couple more points with lending, and then we'll get to our agent panel as well. But one thing we wanted to talk about as far as pricing, what does it cost buying a home? We do have a mortgage calculator at thecollectiverealty.com. That's just going to tell you what your mortgage payment is based off of your interest rate. It's not going to include property taxes. So if you're going to go to The Collective Realty right now, Natalie, what would you advise the viewers here as far as the interest rate to put in? What's kind of an average first-time buyer interest rate that they should be putting in at this moment to kind of see, like, hey, I want to buy a $500,000 house at a what percent interest rate?
I've been telling you, they've come down a little bit in the past few days, or past week, let's say. Interest
I have a
rates right
question
now.
though, Natalie. Would it be okay if you could just like quickly define what an interest rate is?
Oh, yes,
That'd be lovely,
absolutely.
because some people might not understand how it affects your mortgage.
Sure. So you guys want to buy a house for $500,000. There has to be a down payment amount because most lenders want a little bit of equity or a little bit of investment from you in purchasing. They want you to just not walk away because you've invested nothing. We tried that in 2006. It didn't end up very well. So you bring a little bit of money down, and then we give you a loan for the rest. So let's say 500,000, you have 5% down, which is 25,000. So we give you a loan for 475,000, right? That's what the loan amount is. Now we are going to charge you interest because we have to make money off of all the money we're giving away, right? The government needs to make money off of it as well. It's not just the banks. So the interest rate, which is going to get confusing, tied to the LIBOR, which is how we do conventional interest rates, is based, that is what your loan will be based on and how your payments will be based. So there's an interest rate that gets charged if you're doing a standard 30-year fixed, which most people are doing. What you're paying per month is interest and principal. So you're paying down the loan amount plus paying interest. A little even more complicated.
It's just like your credit cards,
Yeah.
You have 10, 12, 20% interest rate on your credit cards. The good news is when you buy a house, it's much cheaper to borrow money. So what would that number be now? What's the average first-time buyer interest rate?
I would say 3.1.
Okay, so if you go to the Collective Realty, type in 3.1 and then put in a dollar amount of a purchase price, and then that's going to give you what your mortgage payment is. Now, besides your mortgage payment, you also need to consider property taxes. So property taxes are about 1.25% of your total purchase price. So if you have a $500,000, house that you're buying or condo, you need to also multiply that by 1.25%, and then you're going to be paying that. Usually people will break it up and pay it per month. It's due twice a year, but a lot of times as first-time buyers, you're going to be paying that per month. So 1.25% of 500,000 is like what, 6,000 or something like that. So you might be paying, say, around $600 in addition a month towards your property taxes. Is that right, Natalie?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so keep that in mind too. There's, your mortgage payment when you do the mortgage calculators and your property taxes. Some mortgage calculators will include your property taxes in it, some don't. So make sure you're aware of that and what the difference is. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Austin.
There's a question from a Julian. If this is your first time buying a home, should you get a loan from the bank or a private lender? And Natalie, which one are you?
I am a mortgage bank. So there's all different kinds of banks that give mortgages. There are direct lenders, there are depository lenders, there are mortgage banks, there are brokers, there are proprietary lenders, private lenders. They're all different and they all kind of do a little bit of different things, right? So depository lenders are our big banks, our Chase, Wells, Citi, B of A's. Those are our big banks. They're called depository lenders because you can go actually deposit all your money there. So that's a depository lender. Now they do mortgages, but that is not their priority to do mortgages. So sometimes you become second best for them. It's not like you are their priority. And we see that quite a bit actually in their turn times and how they don't feel tied to a borrower or responsible for them at all, actually.
We recommend not going to your bank. Don't go to Bank of America, Wells Fargo. Our experience has been, just like Natalie says, it's much harder to get the loan and it can be very difficult in the end. So mortgage bankers like Natalie Movement Mortgage are our number one recommendation.
Yeah, we do everything, right? So we will direct lend, so we can do things very, very quickly. We can broker out to separate investors if it's a really special product that you want or that we need on the file. We, have wholesale that we do. We have a bunch of different investors that we work with that we can, get you loans through any kind of loans. Almost every single thing available in the marketplace, we will have available for you. That's what a mortgage bank does. All they do is mortgages. That's it. Proprietary banks are banks that hold all their own loans. So it's something like a credit union. Credit unions are proprietary banks. So is something like UBOC. It's just a small bank in California. Those are what we call proprietary lenders, and they have all their own guidelines. They don't have to follow the rules of the Fed or the government because they're holding, it's kind of like a private bank. They're holding all their own loans and all their own funds. I can broker to them. So we have that line available for us. And then there's private lenders, which is just that. It's a private lender. Normally these are hard money loans. It's just like people wanting to get in on the action and make some money off the money that they have, and they charge you a lot, but they won't ask for as much upfront. And so they're all different types of mortgage banking.
Natalie, do you want to put your contact info in the chat? A few people have asked for it. And if you're not in California or Southern California, Natalie has referrals for you in other parts of the country in case you're there. But Natalie is amazing, so I would talk to her first. One question I saw Andrew asked is, what's the most amount of money I should put down for a down payment? Keep in mind that you want to put down as much as you can because that's going to make your mortgage payment less, but you need to keep some money because owning a property, you'll have some other expenses that you may need to do. Like if you own a house, you need to keep in mind you may have to repair the roof, or you may have a plumbing issue, or other repairs that you may need. If it's a condo, it'll be less money. You're paying your HOA dues, so that's kind of like your savings account to take care of the whole building. So there's less expenses with a condo. But just keep that in mind. And the more money you put down, the less your mortgage payment will be. I would go over your personal scenario with the mortgage banker, with Natalie, and say, hey, this is how much money I have. This is what my credit is, and Natalie will run your credit. I'm looking to pay $2,500 a month. I have this much down. How much should I put? And we'll strategize with you to help you figure out what's going to make the most sense for you. That's not going to stress you out and make you go crazy financially. Like, we want you to be happy. And by the way, the first couple of years owning a home, for a lot of people, it is a little different financially. It's a little more stressful because you're putting a lot of money into buying that home in the beginning. You have your down payment, you have any repairs that you're doing. But after that, it gets easier as time goes on. But the first couple of years are a little tough. So you want to make sure you have some type of savings on the side as well. So any last thoughts, Natalie or Austin, any last questions on the lending side before we get to?
Oh yeah, I had one more question about the lending side, and it's something that I get asked a lot. It's because people who come and talk to me about what mortgage is, I usually give them your name and say, talk to Natalie. But if they don't want to take that next step to meet someone new, a lot of their questions are, I have so many other payments. I have a car payment. I have student loans. I'm paying back hospital debts. And they talk a lot about their debt to income ratio. And I was wondering if you could capitalize on that and maybe give us some information on how a debt to income ratio affects your chances on getting qualified.
That's how we qualify you. So it's very important to keep the numbers in check for sure. What I like to tell people is, let me review your file before you go paying off all of your debt. Because a lot of the time, I don't need you to pay off your debt and I can still qualify you, and the numbers and my debt ratios are still okay. I had somebody come to me yesterday who was like, I finally have paid off all of my debt. I'm so excited. I can do this. I can get a mortgage now. And she had spent like $45,000 paying off all of her debt over the past couple of years and came to me with $12,000 in the bank. And I was like, okay, well, now we need to wait for you to replenish your bank account so that we have enough money for a down payment. Whereas she's a salaried borrower. She makes like $10,000 a month. And I didn't need her to pay off any of that debt. Like her ratios were great without or with the debt, you know? So a lot of the time, come to us first, and then we can also strategize how you pay off the debt. So there are some credit cards that are more important to pay off than others. Credit cards with higher monthly payments. Paying a car to less than 10 months remaining will kick that debt off my file. So it's just best that you do reach out to a lender before you make any large decisions like I have to pay all my debt off before I can even get qualified. Just know that there are ways around it, and it's better to be more strategic in how you're doing those things.
Okay, so you get qualified for a loan and you have a mortgage. Hooray. Say you're a teacher and you have all these debts. Like Evelyn has a question because she doesn't have an income in the summer. She's a teacher. So she's not there making an income on that summer, which is a catastrophe in my opinion. And she's really concerned about mortgage insurance. How can a teacher who doesn't have an income in the summer, are there any strategies to maybe avoid that, get around mortgage insurance, or any strategies once you have it?
Well, they're two different subjects. So mortgage insurance is when you put less than 20% down, you have mortgage insurance. And nowadays there's a lot of mortgage insurance companies. Don't be afraid of mortgage insurance. It's really not that expensive. There's a lot of competition out there. So mortgage insurance is not a terrible thing to have. You know, it has a bad rap, but now it's really not that expensive. It's very affordable, honestly.
And so Evelyn was saying last year that was the reason that pushed her over the edge, the mortgage insurance. So our rates, I mean, overall, when you got qualified last year, rates might be less this year than they were then. So I would try again and see where you're at. But there's no other real way around it, or is there any like special teacher programs that don't have mortgage insurance, or any other like things maybe she didn't think of?
We used to have a teacher loan called CalSTRS, and they did away with it for some reason, like 5 years ago. I would say, you know, we know that teachers work 9 or sometimes 10 months. We do the income on an average of those months. You know, we take the income that you make in that 9 months, we divide it by 12. That's how we get our income. As far as not qualifying, you might now, I don't know, depending on how much money you have to put down. I would say, let's try. It just depends.
Let's
or maybe
try.
they didn't,
awesome.
They didn't do FHA. Sometimes FHA does have higher mortgage insurance, but they might not have looked at that option for you to where the ratios can go higher.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if any of you have asked questions, I've been trying my best to answer them privately in the chat. But Ms. Sol Martinez had a question. They want to be a real estate investor. So I wanted to speak on that a little bit. If you want to be a real estate investor, but you don't know where to start, you can start with where you live. I would find a friend, someone that you really trust, care about, maybe your wife, if you have a partner like that, or husband. And I would buy a multifamily property using an FHA loan if you don't have a whole lot of money down. And I would sort of put a little bit of money, if you have it, into the other units. You could renovate it, create equity, and you'll be able to raise the rent since you've created value in the property. And the name of the game is house hacking. And if you can have your other unit pay for where you live, you get a place to live for free, not for free, but they're paying it for you. And not only are they paying your rent for you, but they're also paying to build up equity in your property. And equity is just money that's yours. It's money that you put into the house, and so on and so forth. You get an FHA loan, you do that once, you house hack it, and then you move out and you have renters move into the unit you used to live in. And then you repeat the process and you move up every time. You start with a duplex, then a triplex, then a quadplex. Then after 3 years, if you did it right, you have 3 properties. And that's the name of the game. So I hope that answers your question on what's an easy step on becoming a real estate investor, because that's what I'm about to do. And I'm looking forward to it with a good friend of mine.
I wanted to speak to that a little bit because I had a conversation with a new client actually looking to buy their first property. And the question was house or condo. And I thought, and knowing them and knowing what they're about, I said, you know, there is a third choice, is buy a multifamily to start with, live in a unit, just like Austin is saying, live in a unit and have the rent help pay your mortgage. Even if you don't pay all of it, it can greatly decrease your payments allowing you to accumulate equity in that house. So then it's also called, he calls it house hacking. It's also called equity leveraging.
That's the TikTok term. That's like the TikTok term.
I figured as much, which is good for our audience. Either way, it's basically, yeah, you're using equity to leverage and get more equity. So as your house appreciates, or your property appreciates, or your multifamily appreciates, you can borrow or pull out that equity and buy another property, which then appreciates and the rents go up. It's a wealth management strategy. And I have 2 clients that I'm working with, aside from the one I was talking to. They're 30 years old, they're friends, and they don't want a house. They don't have, partners or anything. So they're gonna buy, their first place is gonna be multifamily. And I'm seeing that more and more. And you don't have to do that, it's just something to think about.
Answering questions. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's such a great point, and I think it's not talked about enough. It's a much higher level of thinking if you're looking to buy as an investment, and that's really what our goal is to help you do, is to make sure you're buying an investment. We want to help you build wealth long term. So just buying a fancy condo to live in, might not be the best strategy. If that's what you want, then hey, it's a home, and it's a home regardless. It's an investment. But let us help you explore other options as well, and explore what that looks like with a lender and how to make that work.
Yeah, give me a call too. We can get creative, come up with some strategies. It's really fun. I can talk about this stuff for hours. When someone calls me on the phone saying, what can I do if I don't have a whole lot of money because I don't know much about real estate? I love being creative and helping people and coming up with a good strategy. So if you can't buy today, call me and we can come up with a strategy. We'll hop on the phone with Natalie and we'll just map out your next year on what you need to do. And then a year goes by, you call us again, you're in a much better situation, and we got your back all the way.
So there's a few questions in the chat about FHA. Let's just make this clear. You can use an FHA loan multiple times, but your intent needs to be to live in the property for at least a year. Is there really a time frame we recommend at least a year, or what is?
6 months.
6 months. Okay.
You're supposed to live there for 6 months. That's when you sign loan docs, you legally say that you're going to own or occupy and keep that as your primary residence for 6 months.
Okay. And in California, the youngest you can be to purchase a home, I think, is 16 or
18.
18. Okay, I'm wrong. 18. Okay.
Because you're not of legal age yet until you're 18.
Got it. You got to be an adult.
If that's what we call them. No, I'm kidding.
But we have all these influencers now who are 15, 16. They need to invest their money. So we have strategies to help you with that, through trust and through other options. But yeah, if you are younger, there are still definitely ways. Oh,
that's us, yeah. A lot of fires in our neighborhood because the market's hot.
So we have Tim and Karen here in our spotlight as well, who are also, realtors. Karen and I have been in the business for way too long, but we're loving it. What is the best way to search for homes? What's your recommendation for someone who's like, I kind of just want to start looking and explore? Like, what would you tell them? How do you start searching?
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I would tell them not to start searching there are so many sites like Zillow and, that people go to, but they're not the most accurate. They're not the most up to date. They're sometimes overestimated when they give values on them. The best way is to do it with a realtor, and realtors have apps like HomeSnap where the buyer can search the same way we do as a realtor, and they get to see properties that they're accurate, they're available, and I think that's the best way to go, because you don't have to guess, is this a real property that that just went out there. Also, we can do off-market listings. We are more aware of what's coming and stuff. So I think that if you get a relationship with a realtor, you're going to get more on top of things. And right now in this market, you need to be on top of everything, because otherwise, I just had a buyer who called about wrote me about a property she saw on HomeSnap, which is basically the MLS. It's been on one day, all the Saturday and Sunday book, totally booked for showings. You can see it maybe Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, and then the offer's due on Thursday. So if you're not on top of it, you lose out. If you snooze, you lose, basically. So that's what I would recommend.
It's definitely a seller's market, and yeah, in order to get into any property, you need a really strong realtor with a good strategy. Tim, you know, as far as like in the greater LA area, what are some hot areas? What are areas that you think are good investments? Areas that are going to appreciate over the next several years? Where would you tell, you know, first-time buyer who's looking for a good buy, what areas to consider?
Well, when I did it, I bought in Leimert Park because it was an area that hadn't gentrified yet. Well, unfortunately, that kind of ship has sailed. But there's a lot of areas in South Los Angeles that are still relatively affordable. It's pockets. South LA is like Venice was years ago, where you'd have, you know, a gentrified area like right next to an area that was, you know, a little bit less gentrified or even a little bit scary. So you have to kind of monitor the crime, and I can help. I've actually worked with a lot of people to try to guide them through that process and find one that works for them. But there's also Boyle Heights is blowing up east of downtown. And there's still bargains there. There's suburbs northeast of downtown. Anthony at our brokerage have a listing in Mount Washington right now, and we're about to have others. That area has been heating up for a long time, but yet is still relatively affordable. And then as you go out to San Gabriel Valley, places like El Sereno, East LA are also happening. People who want to live in the West Side, that's a lot harder. But yeah, generally, I think the further east you go, and also parts of the valley as well. I don't know if anybody out there is from Los Angeles, but hopefully this is ringing true to you guys.
Where else do you suggest, Karen?
I do a lot of, you know, I live on the east side and I do a lot on the east side. And the one I was just discussing, which had all the showings, that was Lincoln Heights. A year ago, nobody would have gone to Lincoln Heights. Nobody would have gone to Boyle Heights. They would have been, you know, they were very gangy. All that's changed. And so if you are interested in the east side where the prices are better, you have to act really fast. And, you know, the other thing I was going to say about using a realtor is they know what the market is like. And they know how you have to approach buying this house, because it's not what Anthony was saying. It's a seller's market, which means that you have to be aware of how you put in an offer. It's not like it was. We are telling people that if they have $900 to spend, they better think about looking at a house for $750 so they can do some renovation if they need, because they're going to have to offer a lot more money. And you're not, if you don't deal with a knowledgeable agent, you're not going to get anything. You really have to have somebody that knows what they're doing. And, you know, I can't say that enough right now.
Yeah, we really want to help set your expectations. And like Karen said, there's certain areas where, you know, properties that are listed at 750, they actually will sell for 900,000. And there's other areas where maybe it's a condo in West Hollywood right now for 750. It'll probably sell for close to 750. So it just depends on the neighborhood and type of property. And that's where the experience of your realtor is going to help guide you. So, you know, just because something is priced one way doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's going to sell for.
Right.
I think it's also important to have a knowledgeable realtor as you get into this process, and not to get too deep into the weeds, but different markets involve different strategies in making your offer and pushing it through the escrow process. And like, you need to kind of know, and we can really help you through. It's where we add a ton of value in the transaction, is first doing what Karen said, knowing like how much we should be offering, following the market and sort of having been through this and knowing it, but also how much you're going to put down, how much over a list you're going to do, what we can ask for repairs. There's a whole process that that I guess we're going to get into, or we haven't gotten into yet.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to get into next, is how we as realtors are really bringing value to you as the buyers, and it is through the negotiating of the repairs. When you buy a home or a condo, you know, you're buying into potentially a beautiful unit or a unit that has issues. And because of our experience, we're going to help guide you to figure out what inspections should we be doing to find out what's going on with the property, and then letting you know with the findings, how serious is this, how not so serious is it, and help you figure out, okay, is this a property that you really should be buying? And if you are buying it, are you aware of what's going on with the property? So the negotiating of the repairs is something that will come up during escrow. So we will generally advise you to have a home inspection done right away. As soon as we get into escrow, it's maybe $300 or $400. You do a home inspection, and the general inspector will let you know of electrical issues, certain plumbing things, possible foundation, general idea of what condition the house is in. And he can recommend having more inspections done, like you should do a sewer line inspection, you should do a chimney inspection. Anything that he sees that's questionable, we'll investigate more, and we'll help you go through that process. We have the best vendors. We'll recommend, the best people to go out there to educate you on what's happening with the property, so you know exactly what you're buying. And when we find out the full condition of the home, at that point, we will ask the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, are you willing to pay for the crack that's in the chimney? That's $5,000 so that we can use it, because right now they said it's not safe to use. And the seller will say, yeah, sure. Okay, great. We'll move on. Or the seller will say, I'll give you $1,000 credit. You can do it on your own. Or they'll say nothing, that we're doing nothing at all. And then at that point, you as the buyer have the right to remain in the escrow and in the deal and continue, or to back out and to find another property. So don't be nervous of writing offers and getting into escrow, because you have an opportunity to back out once we find out the full condition of the house, once we hear all of the disclosures that are given to us by the seller. So, I mean, Tim and Karen, like, I know you guys are really good with this. What else can you add to inspections?
Well, I think that because people are new in this, and as Austin was saying, a lot of people are young buyers and new buyers and first-time buyers. Contingencies, that's a big thing that a first-time buyer needs to be aware of, needs to know that they're not locked in. My God, if I make this offer, then this is it, I'll lose all my money. It doesn't work that way. You're protected with loan appraisal, with appraisals, with loan contingencies, with inspection contingencies. You have a time frame on all of them. And if something doesn't work out in any of those arenas, you can back out. So if you don't put the offer in, you don't stand the chance. The bottom line is you need to get your offer in, and then you have the power to back out if you need to. So you don't need to be scared. And I think that's what happens to new buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this market, you see a property listed at 750, and you're hearing us say that it's going to sell maybe for 900. Our buyers are afraid, am I overpaying? Is this worth it or not? Well, rest assured that you're not the only one who gets to say what the home is worth. Natalie has an appraiser that she'll send out from her bank to verify yes or no, is the property worth 900,000, or what is it really worth in the appraiser's eyes? So, Natalie, do you want to just touch on appraisals for a moment?
Sure. So we, when you get into escrow, one of the very first things we do is set up an appraisal, because it takes a little bit of time. And if we're doing a really competitive offer with competitive timelines, we need to get that appraisal going. So we schedule an appraiser to go out to the property and inspect it. And what they do is they come back and they tell us what they think the value is. It is just an opinion, but it is based on comps or comparables in the area. So basically, like if you're buying a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, the appraiser is going to look at the most recent 2-bedroom, 2-baths sold in the market. There's a lot of guidelines that go into an appraisal. So it has to be in similar condition, within a mile of the subject property, sold within the past 3 months. They will try to use the same style of home if they can. So it just, as close to the property as we have it, they will try to pull comparable properties. And that's what an appraisal is. You go into an appraisal, you'll see there's 3 to 6 comparable properties that is going to help the appraiser judge the value of the
You're
home.
frozen.
I am?
I
Now
can see
you're
her.
okay. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
you're okay now. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. Did you guys hear that?
No, you're good. Austin's muted.
I'm muted, yeah.
Oh, you're unmuted. You're good. Yeah, that's going to be like the quote of the year, right? You're muted. You're muted.
You're muted.
Unmute yourself.
Right?
Austin, any other questions you want to ask, our agents, anything that you're hearing on your side that we can answer or share before we wrap up?
I have there's just so many. A lot of them just want to get invested into real estate. They want to take the first steps. And Karen had great points. It's just like, get your offer in as much as possible. Personally, my advice is just come up with a strategy. And if you're here on this call, you're taking the right step. You're creating a strategy with people who know what they're doing, and we're very happy to help you. And questions regarding, we covered a lot, especially the ones that I wrote down to pre-ask. Let me see. A lot of people are asking me to get into the real estate business. They want to be just like us, and they want to learn how to make money. I tell them you don't need a college degree to do it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about I'll talk about a strategy that I'm using with my house hacking. We're going to find a duplex in the USC area, and we're going to share a room. We're going to rent out the other room, and we're going to rent out the other unit as well. So we're going to have like at least 3 tenants in our vicinity. And we're going to do it right by the USC area, because after we move out, we want to strategize, because we have good connections with the fraternities and sororities. We want to pass these properties along as rentals, because we know that students pay their rent 100% of the time, because most of their rents come from loans. So if you're looking to get invested into real estate and you want to buy property, I always say go by the colleges, because you could put 2 people in a room, and if the room is valued at $1,000, you could charge each participant a twin bed and a $600 monthly payment. So instead of 1,000, you're getting 1,200, and you can do that with as many rooms in the unit as you'd like. So if you can monopolize a college town with property, because there's so many out there, the USC area is just like dirt cheap compared to UCLA, Northridge, Cal State Fullerton, or just anywhere across the country. College towns they're reliable on rent, and you can be creative with how you charge people. And college kids will live anywhere. So
I live near USC. I live near USC, and I've actually rented. I rent out part of my house sometimes. Right now, I don't, but I've had 2 grad students, USC, the grad students that I've rented to and paid most of my mortgage actually.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one thing about sometimes. I know we've been talking a lot about multi-income, which is a way definitely to raise your wealth. But if some people are nervous about being landlords, about, taking care of a property, a single family and a condo will appreciate. I have clients that bought something 4 years ago for $1 million. It's now 1.9. So there's lots of ways. You don't have to always be a landlord. It's one way. But I don't want to discourage people from thinking I can't make any money on buying a single family home that I might want to be living in or renting out. You can rent it out the same way. Anyway, so there's lots of choices. That's all I'm saying.
And Karen's speaking to a point that I made earlier on too, the difference between renting and paying a mortgage and paying a rent. Even if you buy a house and you're living in it, it is an investment, because especially when you're living in a high income area like Los Angeles, there will be appreciation. And if you time your purchase to an upcoming area, there could be a lot of appreciation. And that's all that appreciation is equity, and that's money in your pocket.
Absolutely. I mean, all of this might seem a little overwhelming. Hopefully we answered a lot of the questions that you had. And don't worry, rest assured, we're here for you step by step. There will be a team working with you through the whole process. Natalie is so amazing, helping you get from step point 1 to actually getting your keys and owning your property. Maybe some of you are ready to do that and start, looking for properties in the next month or 2. And some of you, it might be a year or 2. Just start the process and find out where you're at. You know, have a conversation with the lender, find out what your credit is, do what you need to do to get yourself ready to purchase a property, because it is the #1 way to build wealth in this country long term. And we really want to help you get there. You're not alone. We're there to help you step by step to get you through this and make it work. I know it can sound a little stressful and scary, but it's really not that bad. We do it every day. We'll help you get there. It's worth it every time. You know, the regrets that our clients have is, I wish I did this sooner, or, you know, I wish that I, you know, spent maybe a little bit more money, or I wish that I bought in an area that was going to appreciate more that maybe I wasn't quite as comfortable in. Like, we've gone through everything, and we'll share all of those experiences with you. All of you are going to have different goals and different, you know, ideas of what it's going to be like to own, and we'll figure that out. We'll help you get through it. I mean, Austin is so patient. He's so smart with all of that, that you're going to love working with him. If you came here through TikTok, we're so happy to have you. Check out our YouTube page, because we have lots of other education on there. We have other home buyer seminars, home seller seminars, tons of investor seminars on there. Just go to the Collective Realty. Awesome.
I just want to address one thing. I see that we have a couple people under 18 who want to get started in real estate. You can't get your license if you're not 18. I know this has nothing to do with home buying, but I want to address you because you guys are amazing. If you're under 18 and you want to get into real estate, you can't get your license now. You can't be a part of contracts, because in the law of California, you're under 18. You can't be under contract without parental consent. And but that doesn't mean you can't start building your network now. If you came here and you're under 18, you're in the right place. You're building your network. Stay in touch with us. I put my number in. If you're under 18, you can call me. Start educating yourself, go on Zoom calls, attend networking events, tell people this is what I want to do, and just prepare yourself. So the second you do turn 18, you can get your license, and you'll have multiple deals in the pipeline, and you'll have the fastest head start more than anybody. Don't focus on the money right now. You're under 18. Focus on education, creating healthy, good habits that create positive interactions with people, positive interactions within yourself. Eat healthy, don't do drugs, stay in school, respect your parents, and just keep networking and keep telling people, I want to be in real estate. I love it. That's what I want to do. Start making TikToks. If you saw mine, make some just like mine, build a network. So when you're 18, you'll have so many deals in the pipeline that every broker in town will want to work with you. Thank you. That's me.